Hey everybody, welcome to the New to Coaching community tonight. I'm Allison Peterson, and tonight we are talking about teaching strategies that every coach needs to know. So I hope you will jump in, say hi in the comments. Everyone, introduce yourself, tell us what kind of coach you are, where you're coming from. Tonight's session is going to be so helpful and answer so many questions for you, because I get this question all the time from coaches about how they need to figure out what instructional strategy to start with a teacher. Or if you're stepping into a coaching cycle, what are you working on with teachers and what kind of instructional strategies can you use? Well, guess what? I invited my friend Sherry St Clair to share with us her new book, Intentiona Instructional Moves. And she is basically collected all of the best instructional and teaching strategies in here, done the research for you, created an amazing, simple format for you to use with instructional strategies that you can take with you to conversations with teachers. So you do not want to miss this conversation. So jump in. If you are watching on replay, give us a hashtag replay and let us know that you are catching up. You may know Sherry from her other book, Coaching Redefined, which is another one that is so great, A Guide to Leading Meaningful Instructional Growth. This one is about building a whole coaching program and really creating goals for all of the work that you're doing for instructional growth in your school. So fabulous content from Sherry St Clair. So excited that she's going to be here with us tonight. So let's see who is out there. Alana, hey friend, hey Sandy, hey Karen, great to see you. Hyoka, how are you? Everyone has been showing up lately. Hi, Kim, it's great to have you all here. Veronica, I'm so glad you all are here. Okay, if you haven't said hi in the comments yet, please say hi so we know you're there. If you are watching on replay, drop your hashtag replay. Just so you know too, if you have not gotten a copy of Kickstart Your Coaching Cycles, my new book, it is available on Amazon now as well, and it is currently on sale for $12.99, which saves you about $7. So you definitely want to grab that. Today is kind of the last day of that sale. So if you are, as we're talking tonight, looking for any of the books that we talk about, the ones that are Sherry's books or Kickstart Your Coaching Cycles, you can just go to my website, newtocoaching.info. And at the top, there's a section that says like books for coaches. Just click that and you'll see links to all of the books that we talk about tonight. And then also many more coaching books that you may want to consider. So Kickstart Your Coaching Cycles is available on Amazon, and so are Sherry's books. So I really want you to start getting these resources around you so that you have everything you need when you're coaching. So again, tonight's topic is we are talking about how these research-based strategies can be used in coaching, how you can maximize these teaching strategies, bring them to teachers, and then help them implement them. So I'm so excited to have Sherry on with us tonight. So I'm going to bring her on. Let's see. One more. Brittany showed up. Trisha, Johanna, how's everybody doing? Karen? All right, good. I'm so glad everyone jumped in for tonight. So Sherry, come on, friend, and say hi to everybody.
Hi.
How are you?
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me tonight.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. So tell us, introduce yourself to the community in case they haven't had an opportunity to encounter your work and the things that you're doing in coaching and in instruction and teaching. Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure, I'll do that. But first, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here. I love, love, love this community. You know that. I've told you that behind the scenes, and I'll say that to this group as well. This is just a fabulous Facebook group, a fabulous community, and I love just getting on it often and reading comments and getting to know people. So I feel like I learn as much as giving advice for others to learn from. So I'll say that. So yes, my name is Sherry St Clair, and just to give you just a really short synopsis of who I am, I have been a teaching assistant, a classroom teacher, a high school administrator. I've worked for our state department. It was my least favorite job, and just because it was too far away from kids, just too much red tape, too far away from kids. And then I moved from that role to just being pulled nationally to be a consultant for middle and or for at the time at the State Department was for middle and high schools, but then I was pulled nationally to be a consultant for all schools. I taught elementary, was an administrator at high school, so I have an array of experience there. And then just my international work grew, and I left the school system and just became a full-time consultant. It keeps me hopping. I'm very busy, but so blessed with my work. I get to work with some of the top schools in the country and some that are not, and internationally as well, and just love being able to pull all that experience in and help schools to grow from where they are.
Yeah, I love seeing on your Facebook feed anytime that you share pictures of your workshops. I get incredibly jealous and wanting to go to attend one of your workshops, and they always look really interactive, and like everyone is walking out of there with all sorts of really great takeaways, and I don't know, it just always looks very inviting. So it sounds really great what you're getting to do.
I love what I do, and that kind of shows when you love what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about the newest book, Intentional Instructional Moves, and what has driven you to do this research and write this book, and how, these coaches right here are going to be able to use it right away.
Yes. So, my first book, Coaching Redefined, was written for instructional leaders, whether you're an administrator or an instructional coach. I was an administrator trying to be a coach. We didn't have a coach. We couldn't afford a coach. So I had to learn how to play those dual roles. Anybody that is a coach, that's a leadership role as well. So Coaching Redefined was written to set up that coaching system in your school. How do you grow as yourself as an instructional leader? How do you grow your school? How do you set up the coaching cycles, as you said? And then as that book rolled out, the questions that I received started to change a little bit. And it was, okay, now I have the system set up, but Sherry, what do I coach and how do I best coach that? And that's where I started to think about this piece of writing, because the schools would call me in and say, we just need a handbook to show teachers what effective instruction looks like. And coaches would say to me, if I just had a few things that I could take to a teacher, we don't have time for a whole book study on these topics, but just little pieces that would be meaningful to take to a teacher and use with them. And the more I heard that, the more I thought, I can do that. I can do that for schools. It would take some time, and it did. It took me over 2 years to write this book because of the amount of research it took to do it. But I just wanted to filter through the things, all the research around these topics, and bring teachers the best of the best. And that's really what I've tried to do in this book.
Yeah, absolutely. So out there, if you're listening along and you are following along, feel free to ask questions as we're talking, yes. But definitely let us know if you are feeling this way. Like, are you feeling as though you just wish you had a toolbox of instructional strategies? Because this right here seems to be something that people come to the New to Coaching group all the time asking this question. And it's always worded a little bit differently, but basically, like, where do I get the instructional strategies from is the question. And it's this, I think I talked to a member of my community the other day, and I think for her, being that like often coaches are veterans, right? And they're stepping out of the classroom after having been in there for so long, that they have created such natural teaching ability that they've kind of forgotten that they actually were employing strategies. And they just do it so naturally now, they kind of don't even really realize that they're doing it. Like very basic, classroom management things or the instructional approaches. And so then they back up and they're now turning into coaches, and they're like, okay, wait, so I need some words to put to the things that I naturally know how to do. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to get frustrated with teachers because you're like, why don't you just know how to do that? But right. You realize as this coach stepping out is like, oh, I actually have a ton of experience and I just learned all this at some point, but it's become so natural to me that backing up to name it can sometimes be hard. I don't know if you've seen that.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I see is principals will hire a coach because they're a great teacher. So they have been this awesome teacher, and they're like, I want every teacher to be like that. So they put them in the coaching role. And then those coaches get out and they're like, what do you mean not everybody likes to teach? And not everybody wants to be with kids. And not everybody's as motivated as I was. I thought everybody did this stuff. And so then we have to think, how do we intentionally help people to help them grow, walk beside them, and what strategies do we use? And not only just strategies, but good strategies, best strategies, the ones that help students retain content. I think that's a critical piece that as coaches we have to remember is we can offer different strategies to teachers all day long, but what we want to do is we want to think about research-based ones that really help students learn content better and retain content. I think part of the thing that I see often is schools say we have a tier 1 issue, and it's because we're just doing these things and not thinking about what we're doing, how does it help students retain and learn, so that we don't have to do as much reteaching and we can go on and teach other content.
Yeah, no, I absolutely see that. And I always, it is hard for the new coach, especially, to transition to a role where she is now looking around and realizing not everyone was using those instructional strategies she was using. And she is like, thinking, well, why wouldn't you do that? Why don't you know that? And I know that the other thing I know about new coaches is usually they were very, in the classroom, they were very just apt to learn on their own. Like, I mean, I had to move my bookshelf, so it's not here anymore, but like how much we devour a book and then try something. We're willing to just learn and try and learn and try. And I just did that so independently. No one ever had to tell me to pick up a book and learn a strategy and try it. But I learned very quickly that is not everybody else's approach, is like, go figure it out, try it, and keep trial and error. And so I think we don't realize that we need to kind of have something that's an easy way to capture like one instructional strategy that we could work with a teacher on and help her know like the steps to execute it, because it is so natural to us sometimes, given that we figured it out and learned it and all of that. So, so tell us a little bit more about some of the research. I wanted to know about the research. So tell me more about why, like, how do you know that the strategies you picked in here are the right ones? Like, tell us a little bit more about the research you did, because that helps us.
So I filtered through a ton of research to write this book. I believe it ended up being like 26 pages of resources that are referenced in this book, and that's, part of the reason why it took me a couple of years to write it, but I wanted to make sure I did get the best of the best. So everything that I recommend as far as a move for teachers in this book has gone through 3 big filters. One is it has to support social emotional learning. I believe that we have to think about the student holistically and help them to develop skills such as self-awareness, self-management, perseverance, those social emotional skills. So any strategy that I have, any intentional move will help a child develop that, student develop that. Number 2, it has to be strong in the science of learning. I rely heavily on Marzano's research for that and John Hattie's research for that. I just think both of those are a wealth of information for us to think about those high impact strategies. So anything that is in this book has a high impact on student learning. And then the third one is I believe that we are all responsible for helping students develop into lifelong productive citizens. And because of that, I look at the World Economic Forum research, and that research is done looking at the career skills that students need once they graduate. Now, that's hard for us to think about when they're in kindergarten, but we know those 12 years go really fast, and we have to think about how do we develop that learner to be an active learner, to be a leader, to develop curiosity, ideation, these skills that the job market's asking us for. How do we help cultivate those from beginning of school all the way up till they graduate? And so those are the three big pieces. They have to be strong in the world economic form skills, SEL, and then the science of learning. And then the other thing is many of the strategies that I recommend pull in literacy, because literacy skills, first of all, we are at a national, I believe, a national epidemic of trying to get students to have stronger literacy skills, but it also influences the rest of their life. And it's connected to so many things, as far as who's on social services, who's incarcerated, who votes, who volunteers, their quality of life after they leave school. And so it really is a lifelong skill. So you will see that many of the strategies pull in an integrated reading, writing, listening, speaking skills, because I feel strongly about that. We need to be models of how to integrate that into every classroom.
Yeah, no, I mean, so many coaches are like just nodding their heads, knowing yes, we need all of these things in these strategies. We have to have the SEL, we have to have the literacy. We know that. And then oftentimes, it's a lot to think about to incorporate all of those things. So to know that the strategies that you've researched and identified are really going to wrap up all of those things and be a great fit under those umbrellas. I mean, I think that that's going to be really, really helpful. So what, one question I get a lot from new coaches is about helping teachers with classroom management, because classroom management is usually the place where, if they start doing walkthroughs or looking in classrooms where it's most obvious that there's a problem, right? like you walk into a room, and if it's out of control or it's just not being managed well, you can see it right away. You can't always see that the instruction's not great until you stay a little longer, you see a little more. And so it usually seems to be the lowest hanging fruit and the place of, I don't want to say panic, but sometimes I hear from new coaches, I can't believe it's that bad. And so what do I even do to start? Because it's so bad, right? So I think that that can be a place where they can get really worked up or worried. So what kind of instructional strategies do you have in here about management that might be supportive for some of our coaches to lean into?
Yeah, so first, let me say with the classroom management piece, one of the things that I'm seeing nationally is we are getting more and more teachers being hired as teachers that have not gone through the traditional program to be trained as teachers. And so they're coming to us maybe from the business world, and they don't necessarily have a background in teaching pedagogy. And so they wouldn't know classroom management. They've not experienced that. They've not been taught that. So as coaches, I think it's important to remember where that teacher has come from, where they are. And if that's where they need support, then, that's a great place. There's nothing wrong with helping a teacher with classroom management first. I would say, we need to ask ourselves, why is the classroom management not okay? Sometimes it's kids are bored. And if we look at John Hattie's research, boredom has an effect size of minus 0.49, which means students are losing content knowledge when they're bored. So sometimes that boredom leads to them being harder to manage in the classroom. So we might look at the engagement instead of just classroom management. But classroom management is an important part. And so in this book, one of the first chapters is on classroom management, just because of exactly what you said is we cannot ignore that. And so let me explain to the listeners as to how this book is set up, just because I don't think we did that, Allison.
No, we didn't.
So you really get three different things with the book. You get this book, which is broken down into chapters on things that we as coaches face with teachers. And one of the things that I often hear is, Sherry, we don't have time to read a whole book on rigor, or we don't have time to read a whole book on engagement. Or if we do, then we run to that end of the spectrum and we forget what we did last year on that book study, right? So I just broke this book down into chapters of bite-sized bits of various topics. And so with each topic, then I'll go over what it is, why it's important, and then break down the intentional steps that I have used to coach teachers in that area. And then what a teacher would do is take that, like if they identify as needing support with intentional step 1 of classroom management, then they would go to the complimentary companion guide and pull down that section. So you have this print book, and then you have a whole nother virtual book that's this size online of all the intentional steps and the strategies to go with it. So they'll match up their intentional step, they pull it down, and in that intentional step, it has various strategies. Then the teacher can pick which one of those strategies they prefer to try. I don't think coaching is about telling a teacher to do something, and I don't think anybody on here probably thinks that either. It's about that collaboration and them choosing that. But we can kind of guide their steps to, here are some choices for that. And then with each of those intentional strategies, then there are handouts to go with it. And it has over 50 handouts that you have access to when you go to that complimentary guide that go with those strategies. So I just need to explain
Yes.
this. And then if you look at some of the topics, classroom management is one of them, and it will be very popular. I get asked about it a lot already, but there's also engagement, rigor, relevance, standards-based lessons, direct instruction, assessment for learning, assessment of learning, scaffolding, differentiation, goal setting, growth mindset, group work, student presentation, student discourse, classroom community. So little tidbits of a lot. And Allison, coaching is a lot. We coach a lot of different areas.
All of those things.
We don't have time to read all that stuff.
Right.
Sometimes we find ourselves just going to give a teacher something different instead of knowing that it's better because we're surviving. And so I hope that this has broken it down. Just here's what you need to know, and here's the great strategies, and here's the steps you would take to.
Yeah. I think this is also very encouraging for a new coach who really feels like she doesn't know what she needs to know. Like usually when they get hired, they just feel very inadequate because they're like, well, I don't know anything about coaching. I know about teaching. Right. And so I think what a new coach can also realize is like, you're taking the things you know about teaching and you're refining them to know like how you would show somebody else that, like, how would you teach somebody else how to teach?
Yes.
What do you need to know? So I need to just go back and refresh my memory on, this classroom management strategy, establishing norms and expectations. Like I know how to do that so naturally, but this is going to lay it out for me. It's going to tell me what that looks like. And then the coach could read this and really feel like she has walked away with like, okay, well, now I have a toolbox. Like I'm walking around to a classroom, I'm trying to help her with something or something else. And I see, oh, well, that strategy is something I could bring to her, offer to her for a solution. Like, I know that a lot of coaches have had to coach into behavior lately. So like classroom management leads to there's behavior problems and what do you do? And so sometimes sometimes it's just going to one of these and saying, okay, well, here's a strategy we could try. Let's try it together.
Absolutely.
I love that it could kind of boost the confidence of a coach to just read through and go, yeah, okay, I know that engagement is important, but this is telling me the research-based reason why it's so important so that I could speak more clearly about it.
That's right. And you don't have to spend time reading a whole book on that one topic, because we just don't have the time. I didn't have the time as an administrator to do that, and I know that the coaches do not have that time either. And so that's really one of the things that one of the reasons that I felt like I could serve the community by pulling this together. And the other thing is, your teachers don't have extra time to do that either. They really don't. And if we can just help them be that much more intentional about their thought process and why they're doing what they're doing, and making sure that we're using those things that help students learn better, more effectively, then they're going to be grateful for that, because they don't have to spend that time reteaching. But it just helps everybody, helps the flow of that work and that learning.
Yeah. And I was thinking a little bit more about one-on-one coaching, but as you said that, I was also thinking, well, it would be great to bring this to a PLC conversation and just say, yo, let's just look at this little chunk about engagement. And why don't you realize, like, hey, here's this companion guide. If you see these strategies, you could try one of them, or pick one that you want to try, or just something that kind of sparks a conversation about that, doing that in your PLC or grade level team. And you have now, as a coach, something to bring to the table that's digestible and easy to see.
Yes, that's the whole point of it, is that, coaches would say, I need something to take to my teachers. They won't hear it from me, but do you have something I can give them? It had to be a quick read. And, we do need things that are quick. So the way that it's worked well for me so far is I've had participants just break down like they'll pick a chapter that they're interested in before I work with them, and we'll go through the research part, and then I'll just have them set their own goals. And I say, well, now, if you wanted to dig into one of these, which one would you dig into? And then which intentional step do you feel like you're on? Here's the intentional steps. Which one do you feel that you're on? And then have them go and pull down the strategies and look at the strategies and decide what fits their classroom. There are no one size fits all to teaching students, and there is no one size fits all to coaching teachers. We're all different, and we all relate to things differently. So you definitely want that choice, but that has been well received when I do it that way.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, Rebecca brought up a question. How can we gauge which new hires need training prior to starting in the classroom? This question, I think, is really important, because I feel like I talked to a coach just yesterday, and she was saying, like, Allison, she needs so much training that I can't teach her how to teach. Like, she's in the middle of teaching and I can't teach her how to teach. Mm-hmm. And so this is, I think, very going back to what you were saying, like, many of our teachers are coming to us without the training, or without the extensive training that they needed. Maybe they didn't have student teaching. They're just not coming with the prior knowledge. And then they don't have, I don't know, sometimes if you don't know what to do, then you kind of are frozen. You don't even know what you don't know, and you don't know what to get started on. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that. How do we gauge which new hires need training prior to starting in the classroom? But that was one question that came up.
I don't know if this will answer the question perfectly, but Rebecca, I think it was Rebecca. I don't know what your role is, if you're coach or you're administrator, because
she's saying those teachers are not certified.
So I think for you, if you're a coach, if you're an administrator, you might need to think about the hiring process. But if you're a coach and you're not involved in the hiring process, and I mean, quite frankly, some school systems don't have a lot of choice. There's not a ton of extra teachers out there.
Right.
But I want you to think proactively and reactively. And so right now you're probably having to react to those people that have already been hired. But I also want you to think proactively about, how do you get that professional learning in the community that culture in your school system? How can you set that up to be lunch and learns, or just tidbits of professional learning that you're doing during PLCs? Just you have to think about creating that culture. That question goes really to chapter 10 in Coaching Redefined, about systems thinking in your school, and not just always finding yourself in a position of having to react. Because, if you're seeing it happen as a pattern, you want to get ahead of that. A lot of schools will have new teacher training to where they pour into them once a month, and they make it a requirement when they're hired that they show up once a month for that. And then you have a little bit longer time in that. Sometimes they'll require them to meet with the coach more often, so you have more of a captive audience with them there for a longer period of time. But that's a big question that you're not going to solve overnight. You just need to take that in tidbits and think, long-term and short-term with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing that is hard is that we feel a pressure as the coach that we should be able to get in there, work with them, and actually help them. And we want to help them, but because there is so much to learn, it feels like we're not making any progress here. It's not sketching. And so I think the other thing to think about, Rebecca, and I know it's like Sherry's saying, it's a systems thing, but I think what I've realized too is that don't assume, right? So like the new teacher training, we would do all the curriculum training, but I wouldn't really stop and do like instructional strategy training about classroom management, because I'm assuming that they're coming in knowing how to create. I was just reading that one, building meaningful relationships and establishing classroom norms. And like, these are things that maybe we're at this point taking too much assumption that they are coming in with. And we don't want to demean more of a veteran who's coming to join and say, of course they know, but it's a little bit more about creating, what do you believe at your school and how do we do it here? And so bringing them on in the onboarding process is another thing to like systematically think about, like you're saying. But in the moment, all you can do is support them where they are with what they can handle at the time, because it's a lot of learning to be done, and you may just have to do a little more hand holding than you expect. And I think that's hard for new coaches to think, I have to hold her hand through everything. Like, I know it wasn't like that for you, but she needs that much guidance at first. So just think about that support level to provide your teacher. And also know it's not your weight of responsibility on your shoulders if this teacher is not doing as well as you hope that she would, even though y'all are working together.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I would say to keep in mind is just the psychology of how people change. I love Daniel Pink's work. Daniel Pink, endorsed by Coaching Redefined book. And in his research of how people change, he talks about there needs to be 3 elements in place. They need to know the purpose and believe in the purpose. They need to have autonomy in terms of choice, and they need to feel like they can master it. So it has to be a small step, not just, okay, we got to work on your classroom management and now I'm giving you 15 things that overwhelms them. And that purpose piece, they have to see how it ties to a bigger picture. So how is it going to help me in the long run? How is it going to help students in other places in the school? And so if you can have all 3 of those elements in place, then you're going to take a smaller step, but you're going to be able to take more steps. So part of coaching is knowing when to move forward, but also knowing when to hold back. You're going to step in that classroom and see 99 things probably that you could help them with, but just being real intentional about what is that first step with that teacher. And Allison, you're right. You cannot go in there thinking, I'm going to fix everything today. It's not going to happen. That's not how people change. You're going to meet resistance that way. And so you really have to remember that psychology part when we're coaching teachers.
That is so, so true. And Veronica had a great answer too. And I think this is another answer, is like take them for a half day or a full day of coaching. And again, to Sherry's point, don't overwhelm them with a million things they need to change, but take them for a longer time period so they have more time to think about it. So Veronica said, we're intentionally going to create a half day training on classroom management strategies for engagement. And honestly, those are some of the best coaching sessions I have, is when I get them away from school for a half day or a full day. And we really think about what we're going to work on when we get back. And we've done the kind of like you're talking about, Sherry, like the purpose side of it. Like we know why we're going to change. We've maybe done a little bit of reading together to see like where we're going to focus. So I don't know if that's an option for you, but get creative with how you can spend more time talking to them about the things that they need. Karen said, can you share some more specific strategies from the book so that they can get some? So like when it gets to intentional steps here, she has like, these are the different strategies. Is this what you were talking about? So we've got building meaningful relationships with students, establishing classroom norms and expectations, introducing classroom routines and procedures, promoting growth mindset. So each of these would have a page or two or more on the download, right? So it's just like a list of them here, but then you get a free download that comes with the book that is giving you the step-by-step and the how-to for these strategies. The ones including meaningful tasks and foster student accountability for classroom management are a few that you highlighted.
Yeah. And so Karen, like if we're like intentional step one, if you feel like the teacher feels like that they are okay building meaningful relationships, but they would like other ideas, then they would go and they pull down that intentional step. And then one of the things that I have in there are some ways that teachers can do that, like greet students, different ways to greet students, different surveys that they can fill out to let them know how they are, creative ways that teachers can learn about students' lives and connect with students' lives. And those are just little strategies in there. When we get to rigor, I walk them through how they can build up the rigor of their lessons with the questioning, the oral questions, the written questions, the task that they do, and then different strategies within those as well.
Yeah,
Does that
absolutely.
give you enough? I don't know if that's enough examples for that or not.
Yeah, no, tell us, ask us more questions if you have them, friends. We're here, we're answering, we're listening. Peer modeling can be powerful in this situation. Is there a colleague that they can watch that has superior classroom management? This one is a huge go-to resource because it's not just you telling them anymore. And it's hard to model in their classroom, I find, because I can put on my teacher voice and use all of my tricks, but they can't necessarily always mimic what I'm doing. So you have to break down the steps for them. And that's the other thing, is if they go to another classroom and they see it, then they might say, okay, well, tell me more about that. How did she do that? Or what did she do? So you can help her break down the steps. So it's really about realizing that you've got to break down the steps of the natural teaching that you know how to do. You know how to step in there and command the room, but she doesn't know how to do that yet. So you've got to help her.
And, you know, the one thing that I would caution you on that is kind of like what you were talking about, Allison, is these, if they're really good at that, then it's just going to seem like it's natural. And sometimes people will come back and say, well, they just have better kids than me. Or those kids do not act like that in my classroom. It's after lunch and they're done for the day. And so you have to, if you send somebody in somebody else's classroom, you still want to make sure you control that intentional piece of that, and that you give them very specific things to look for, and then you come back and you have a follow-up conversation to make sure that they're seeing what you need them to see. So how did the teacher gain the attention of the students, and what did the teacher do when the students didn't do what they asked the first time? Like, those things will get they'll start to look at everything in the room, from the bulletin boards to just the tasks that students were doing. They will get off track easy if we don't just really focus their attention on some of those things, and then talk about how they got there, not just that they did it, but how did they do it?
Yes. And I think often too, a teacher who is up and running at a high level has put a lot of energy into that at the beginning of the year to set up all of those procedures
Absolutely.
and things. And so you don't get to see all the work she put in, and you think, well, if I just go in my classroom and try this strategy, it'll just work. Well, it took her 6 weeks of setting that up, so
Right.
and I mean, I think we're thinking more towards these teachers who maybe don't have the experience, and really need a lot of guidance and just support in realizing, like, what do I do? How do I execute a strategy? And how do I hold to this strategy and not just drop it and try something else?
A
That's
lot of planning takes place to get those students to do those things. And sometimes they don't realize how much the teacher has put thought into the quality of the task or how they are engaging students, that all that impacts the classroom management, but aren't always visible.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so one of the other things that coaches ask a lot about that I know you have a chapter on is assessment. Working with their teachers for tracking data and working with them on meaningful assessments. So what are some things that you would say that teachers' assessment on learning is a chapter that coaches could really lean into from that area?
Yeah, so I would first say think about assessment into breaking it into two parts: assessment for learning or assessment of learning. So that assessment while they're learning the concept or that assessment afterwards. And so I have two different chapters on that because I think those types of assessments show us completely different things. Really, the most powerful assessment that we're going to get based on research is the assessment for learning. Because if we look at Hattie's research and Marzano's research, the quality of feedback we can give to students that's specific, and how we can come back and reteach small parts of what we're trying to get students to learn while they're learning it, while they're making the mistakes, shows student growth happens at a much accelerated rate versus just looking at it at the end. So really, if you're going to pick one of those, look at the assessment for learning. And then it is, what are assessment for learning strategies that we can use, such as quick writes, thumbs up, but also exit slips, and just those different little easy strategies that many of us know, but then how a teacher can use that data and tweak instruction, not just use it to say, okay, great, everybody's with me, their thumbs are up, but how can a teacher use that to alter the instruction that's happening at that moment in class so that students learn better?
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to a teacher today, and she was so worried about the pacing of her math unit. But the lesson had not gone great, and she felt like they weren't getting it. And she was like, well, I can't stop teaching this unit but they're not getting it, but I can't stop my lessons. And so it is hard sometimes when the teacher does not realize that she has to stop for that formative assessment for learning, so that she can decide what to do the next day, so that she's not, if she keeps moving on, she's going to bulldoze the kids and it's not going to go well, right? But she's so intent on just working through her pacing that's on the guide or whatever, that she's almost sometimes not able to see that she needs to stop and do something else. And that assessment's going to help us know what to do.
Absolutely. And sometimes that is valid, and it's probably not in your situation because you would know that with that teacher. But sometimes I work in school systems where a teacher will say, listen, Sherry, if I do not teach this today, I will get in trouble with my district or blah blah blah. And so they do feel that stress. But we have to think within that span of time that we have to teach this concept, how can we do the ebb and flow of reteaching and scaffolding that instruction appropriately so that students can learn it and digest it, so that we don't have to do so much reteaching.
I know. And it's one of those things that, like, it's just easy for teachers to skip it. It's easy for teachers to not do the exit ticket or to think they know, they have an idea. I think I can tell the whole class is doing great with this. Yeah, but are you sure? And do you know about the two who have been quiet in the background? So like trying to get teachers to anchor into these formative assessment type of strategies and really use those as a way to measure what's really going on. Are you seeing everything you think you're seeing? And I think that could be, a great place for a coaching cycle just around a simple strategy that's going to help them have exit data at the end of each class and then make adjustments for the next day. I mean, that alone can improve your instruction exponentially, just using one teaching them to be confident using one strategy like that.
Right. And there, there's ways to get students to take ownership of that and for them to teach each other as well. And I get into that in the chapter as well. It doesn't just have to be, the teacher doing some of that work, but.
Oh, I love that. I love that for sure. Karen says, how can coaches support teachers with common benchmark assessments data? Does your book have coaching moves regarding those types of common assessments, and what can be helpful there?
I don't go specifically into common assessment data other than, did I put the data protocol? I have a data protocol that I use in coaching, but I cannot remember if I put it in the companion guide for that. I don't think I did, Karen. I just talked assessment in general in there. I don't think you put the common assessment one in there.
Well, I think that it's the same. I mean, we have a lot of teachers who don't have partners, so they don't have anyone to common assess with. But either way, they need to they need to look at how students did on their assessment, and they need to analyze that data. And then if it happens to be common assessment, then we have a little bit more of a pool of people to look at all of the assessment and how all the students are doing. So I think it's about developing the teacher's abilities and patience to stop and look over this data and really analyze what the kids did not learn, rather than, I don't know, just being like, oh, they failed it, or oh, they did so terrible. But let's dig into what was the thing that was missing. I think with common assessment, you just have more opportunity to do that because this question was assessing this exact thing and it's laid out better.
Yeah, and I do have that assessment protocol in there for the summative assessment piece, which could be used with a common assessment. And you're right, it is. It's more of what can we do if they haven't mastered it and learned it, which it could be used for a common assessment. So
I like this on page 164. You have reflection questions like student comprehension. So like, what do students know? What misunderstandings do they have? Do students demonstrate proficiency? So just the questions are listed here for you to use as an individual going over that, or to work with your team on the common assessment conversation and which students are succeeding, which ones are struggling. I think that is a conversation where we sometimes are focused on one end or the other, and we're not seeing every student for where they, we're just more focused on the ones who failed, not the ones who succeeded, and which ones let's pile them. Let's think about these kids in our group. So,
and that's put into a handout in the companion guide as well for them to be able to take and use with teams. So you could use that with common assessments. I just don't think I call it like a common assessment protocol.
Yeah. Well, and also intentional step 1, assess the quality of the current assessment. That would be something that all coaches can help teachers with.
We might have run into that a time or two, might we?
I mean, it's important. It's important that we help teachers know how to assess well, because we want to make sure that the learning is happening. So sometimes that is something we assume teachers know how to do. They know how to create an assessment that will assess the right things. And most of the time we have to embrace that, like, they're not curriculum designers and they are not assessment designers. That's not really what they learned when they went to school. That's a whole different type of learning, So They don't
And it's
always have that.
hard. It's hard. And we want to make sure that in in the classroom is a learning opportunity as well. One of the
Yes.
things like that's tied to the rigor piece. One of the things that I coach on is if we're trying to increase the rigor, and we know that the career skills ask students to be able to think as problem solvers and critical thinkers, but yet our assessment is all 90% DOK1 or low-level rigor items, then we're really telling the students this is what's important to us, and that's the learner we're helping to create. So our assessments really need to match our expectations around rigor for our classroom.
Yeah, and a lot of those things, when I have conversations with teachers, are about like content versus skills. Like, okay, so they understood the novel or the history content, but what do you want them to be able to do with that? Like, so are you assessing the skill that you taught them, or are you just assessing the knowledge? Are they able to show you that they can actually do that independently? So I worked with a teacher on that fairly recently.
Yes.
So, oh my goodness, we are almost on an hour here. How did that even happen? We're just chatting away. So friends out there who are listening in, let us know if you have any other questions you want Sherry and I to answer for you. And then also tell us what has been most useful for you from this conversation tonight. We really want to know what you feel like is a good takeaway for coaches, especially from this book and this resources, because we really want you to feel like this is something that you can have as your toolbox in your hands so that you can really be prepared. So, okay, so there's so many great things in here. And then that download, the goal setting, the group work. Oh, it's so good. I'm just so excited to get further into it.
Thank you. I loved it. I've loved pulling it together. This is a book I've wanted to write for a long, long time. I just knew I wanted to do it well when I did it. And Allison, how long I've been working on this baby. But
yes.
I'm thrilled that it's out there, and I'm hoping that it'll help lots of people. It's really been getting some good feedback. So it is my hope that it helps lots.
Yes, absolutely. And remember, for those of you who want to get a copy of it, you can go to newtocoaching.info. If I can get my backslash, where'd my backslash go? But at newtocoaching.info at the top, it says books for coaches, and you can grab a copy of it there. So, Sherry, as we're wrapping up tonight, and you know the heart of the coach, you know what she's dealing with, you know what she's facing. What kind of encouragement do you have for the new coaches out there? I mean, what happens right about now for a brand new coach is there's just, the first 4 months of coaching are pretty hard. You're getting your rhythm. You don't get a great response from some teachers. Your heart's a little bit broken, and you're wondering whether or not this is the right job for you. So what are some encouragement you might leave my sweet friends with here?
Well, now just let me tell you that we all face that.
We do. It is not new. You are not alone. That is the message.
It is all of us. I mean, I have had somebody tell me, everybody can write a book. What it doesn't matter. You wrote a book. So I just understand that doesn't change. It doesn't matter if I was in an administrator role or coach's role. It's just a human behavior. And that's the one thing that I think that I want you to take away is that you are coaching humans, and they can be lovely and they can be not so lovely. But just stay on your path and do what's right, and know that do that over and over and over and over. And it does pay off big dividends. And you may not get to see that overnight, and you might not get to see that in a year. That's the hard part of coaching. And some of your people that you'll coach will go away and go into leadership roles, and then you'll get new teachers. And that's where I say, I know you're doing something right if those teachers are hired on for those bigger jobs, or they seem as bigger jobs and those roles. But don't put the weight of the world on your shoulders. Do one thing at a time, small steps, and be happy with that. Be at peace with that. You can't do it all. So I mean, we all get beat up in this work.
Yeah.
I get beat up in this work, but I'm okay with that because I know that's just human behavior. I noticed you have Switch as one of your books, listed because it talks about that resistance piece, and I talk about that in Coaching Redefined. And if people are going to change, there has to be some resistance, and we have to be okay with that as coaches. You're going to need it. So.
Yeah. And I think that comes out of, a desire to do well. Like when we were teachers, we wanted to do well for our students, and now we're coaches and we want to do well. We're so, passionate about helping kids learn, and then passionate about education and about instruction. And we have all this passion, and it's heavy, and it's not heavy. It's balled up inside of you. And you also feel like nobody else around you seems to have this thing that you have. Like, why don't they care as much as I do? And so the fact that we care so much leads us to put the weight on our shoulders, that it's up to us to change teachers and to transform the school. And friends, just keep at the work, because it takes 3 to 5 years to even see results, much less see big change. And so the work of coaching is not going to be something that you will necessarily see a bright fruit from right away, but get to the end of this school year, and then get to year 2, and just know that year 1 is the hardest for curriculum implementation. For the first year of a coaching program, it doesn't matter what it is. Year 1 is hard. Year 2 is better. And if you keep going, you will see that you are making change happen. And I really believe that is so important to be the message to our new coaches, because it is easy to get down on how hard this work is and how people aren't changing, and they never will change. And we can't allow that negativity to stop our passion that we've got, that we know we can make a difference if we do this work. Yeah. So, I'm on my soapbox about all that, but they said that this was great.
And I want to add that just don't give up on people, because they will surprise you.
Don't give up on people.
Better, and some for the not. But I mean, sometimes you'll be coaching right along and you're like, this person is never going to change. And then all of a sudden they flip. And I've had them do that. And then they're all just like, I don't know who you are, but I'm great. I'm glad.
Well, I had one of them do that at the beginning of the year this year. She came up to me and she was like, I know I've not asked for help before, and I was like, I'm ready. What are we doing? Let's go. I've been waiting for this for years. Let's do it, So they will turn, and half of it comes from, I would say 90% of it comes from them feeling comfortable with you enough to say, okay, I trust this girl. She's shown me that she, is trustworthy enough for me to say I can ask for help and I can be a little vulnerable. And sometimes it takes years for people to break down those walls, but they will, and you will earn that trust. And I believe that the trust is the game changer. So, I mean, it takes time, and there's a lot of other factors, but don't give up on people is always a message for sure. Okay, Veronica says she's so excited about the book and the resources. Thank you so much for all of your knowledge and sharing with us. 3 elements for change: purpose, autonomy, and feeling the goal can be mastered. Yes, this is great work there. And then the book sounds very useful as an instructional handbook. This has been a great hour with loads of helpful stuff. I'm a virtual coach, and it's really hard sometimes. Sandy, we're giving you a virtual hug. And I need to hear your soapbox. Oh, good. Karen needs to hear my soapbox. She heard it from me today when I sent her a message. Okay, friends, if you are feeling a little bit need a little bit of hug support area, just know that please reach out to me, because I do have a paid community of instructional coaches where I do one-on-one coaching work, and I support coaches one-on-one. And so, like Karen, for example, and I have been talking one-on-one. And so if you feel like you need a little more support, if you feel like it's really hard and you need some people to talk to, I'm available. And then within my community, also have more inner circle community of coaches to connect with and really be encouraged by. So don't feel alone. You have a place where you can plug in and really become, get your arm, kind of get the hugs, the virtual hugs around you in that. So reach out to me in a DM and or just put breakthrough in the comments, and I'll follow up with you, because that's my heart, is to make sure that you feel like you have everything you need to be successful. And even if it's just a little encouragement and a little boost and a little soapbox, friends. So thank you so much, Sherry, for being here tonight. I've just really enjoyed chatting with you, and can't wait to continue reading the book and use it in my day-to-day coaching. And even though I have read this one, I'm going to pull it back out and look at it some more. So if those of you who don't have Coaching Redefined, it's going to give you a ton of other resources for creating that systematic change in your school, and really thinking about, I know one of the things we always talk about from this book, Casey Watts and I always talk about your listening tours from this book. We're like, Sherry St Clair says listening tours. Let's do that. So if you are kind of in that stage of building a program, it's going to be a really supportive book for you. So, well, thanks y'all for being here tonight, and we will see you next time we go live. And stay in touch with Sherry in the group. Tag her; she's in the New to Coaching group, and she'll share her books and her links in the group so that you can make sure you get them. And we'll see you next time, friends.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.